Hey, it's Joshua Vergara. What's going on, everybody? All right, let's jump into the OnePlus Open. Open things up, and let's get things started off with a rear-world camera test. After all, the cameras here on the OnePlus Open might be some of the best ones we've seen on a foldable yet. But today, we are going to just get a bunch of photos and videos, take a look at the cameras on here, and I'll chime in from time to time to talk about some of the other aspects of this exciting new foldable from OnePlus. This right here is the OnePlus Open. This is OnePlus's first foldable, and it comes not only with some of the usual OnePlus amenities like an alert slider, but it also comes with that Hassleblad partnership here in the camera system, which is pretty large up here on the back. Also, I realize I should probably show you the actual phone in its entirety without this included case, which I really enjoyed. If you haven't seen my unboxing yet here on YouTube Shorts and over on my Instagram, make sure you go check it out. It did come with this case, which I thought was a really nice touch. Also, it didn't hurt that the case came in the same color of the phone itself. I got the green edition, and you know I'm all about that green color when it comes to these smartphones. But as you can see in the title, this is a real-world camera test, so we're going to let the cameras just take up most of the content here, and I'm going to chime in from time to time during this video just to give some general thoughts on this exciting foldable. I'm sure you've been seeing a lot of content on the OnePlus Open today, so thanks for coming to watch my video. I'll be giving final thoughts on this in a what worked and what didn't video at some point, so make sure you subscribe to my channel if you haven't already so you know when that video comes out. You know I had to do it. Headed over to one of my favorite places to get photos and to just walk around. I haven't been getting a whole lot of steps in lately, so we're here at the Huntington Gardens in San Marino, Pasadena, basically Pasadena. Gonna be running around getting a lot of like cool shots out on this wonderful day in LA. For now, why don't we get some nice cinematic shots using the movie mode. What makes this such an interesting phone is the fact that it tries its best to just play both worlds. On the one hand, you have the larger display on the inside, and there's no crease here. There's barely any crease here, actually. You have to really look for it in order to actually perceive it, but when you're just looking straight on at the phone, it just looks like a tablet in your hands. And then when closing the phone, it actually looks just like any other old phone. So you have the aspect ratio that is much more comfortable for anybody that wants to use the phone closed most of the time, compared to other phones like the Galaxy Z Fold 5, which is a little bit narrow, and of course the Pixel Fold, which is a little bit more stout, a little shorter, a little bit wider. This just feels like a regular phone when closed, and that I think is a huge deal. And there's plenty of power here to take advantage of both configurations. The Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 is the processor on here, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and honestly, in my case, I've really been using the big screen in order to just watch a lot of YouTube and play Marvel Snap. As you know, that's like the game that I like to play the most on mobile. And as far as general usability is concerned, one of the reasons why I love having this aspect ratio on the outside is because when you open up the phone, you get twice that, meaning that when you angle up the screen in order to watch things like YouTube, you have a more or less normal aspect ratio. It's almost as if there's very little compromise in the viewing experience on either configuration of this phone. And one more thing I definitely want to talk about here is the multitasking aspect. If you have an app open, you just hold on the bottom here if the dock is not already up there, and then you can easily just bring over an application and split screen pretty easily. But this is something that we've seen on plenty of other foldables already. But what OnePlus has done is actually change this up with what they call the open canvas. While it's really nice to have like squares and segments of the screen comprised of all of your applications, sometimes you just want to focus on one and then have the other one at the ready whenever you want to go to it. One of OnePlus's funny little anecdotes for it was having something like the football game or even, let's say, a game playing over on the side, and then whenever you do want to get over to your actual tasks, it will just slide over and you can actually do everything you need to do. And once you have a moment, you can just tap over here and go to your game. This has been one of the main ways that I've actually used the open configuration of the OnePlus Open, and I've had a blast doing it. So I'm just messing around in the decks over here in Marvel Snap, and it's taking up basically the entire display, so I have everything at my fingertips. And then if I want to just make a new deck and just try out something new, I have the browser right there up top so that I can actually read up on it and try it out by going back to the game. This is just a really fun way to multitask, and I have to give OnePlus a ton of credit because their approach to it means that their software on a foldable like this is actually really unique. And the dock down here just makes it easy to access some of your most used applications, but also your most recent applications. So if you happen to have a group of apps that you were already using, you can always easily just come right back to it by hitting that little folder-ish icon down in the corner. And the OnePlus Open is just a sleek, stylish device. I know I'm gushing about the green colorway, I'm showing my bias a little bit there, but overall I just think it's a really lovely looking device, even with that huge camera bump on the back that is doing its best to show off that Hassleblad branding. So while OnePlus is definitely coming out of the gate with a great first foldable here in the States, what are some of the things that are missing? Well, mainly some of the extra conveniences that you could argue are meant to be part of flagship smartphones these days. Things like high IP ratings. This only has splash resistance, not full-on water resistance, and there's a lack of wireless charging. I do have to give OnePlus a little bit of credit though, because they made sure that the OnePlus Open can charge up super fast with 67-watt charging, and if you happen to have a Super VOOC charger lying around, you can always just pop it in there and you'll be able to charge up real quick. Got some iced tea because it's still damn hot out. This will be the liquid jade here at the Jade Core at the Huntington Gardens. It's part of the Chinese garden area that's here. For today's tea break though, I'm going to keep things really simple and just ask, what's going on everybody? I hope everybody is taking care of themselves and honestly, it's just nice to have a space for all of us to just sort of talk a little bit, whether it's about the phone or anything else, because I hope you come for the tech, but you stay for the tea. Alright, once I get this thing done, let's walk around a little bit more and get back to the video. Alright, it's time to actually talk about the cameras. If you happen to be familiar with other OnePlus offerings, especially with the Hassleblad partnership, then you kind of know what to expect here. It's just that now the possibilities are opened up because, well, this is a foldable. As far as the what I'll call primary cameras are concerned, you do have a 48 megapixel main sensor, a 64 megapixel telephoto that goes to 3 times optical zoom and 6 times is the hybrid zoom that OnePlus says you would be able to use and still get really good photos, and then a 48 megapixel ultra wide that also doubles as a macro sensor. As far as video is concerned, you've mainly been seeing 4K at 30 frames per second on here. There is 4K at 60 frames per second, and of course there's a slow-mo mode, but that goes down to 1080p resolution. Giving a little bit of quick props to the blur mode here in video. You have to bring the aperture up to like f5.6 to make it look a little bit more natural compared to like a mirrorless camera or something like that. The only thing about this blur video, even though as I'm looking at it, it looks actually pretty nice, it goes down to 1080p resolution. I guess there's quite a bit of processing that has to be done, and that's fairly normal for a lot of these phones when trying to turn on the portrait video mode. Hassleblad brings their color science to all of the photos, and honestly, it hits more than it misses. Portraits are obviously going to be a big deal, but then on a foldable like this, one of the best things you can do is actually open up the phone, use the outer display as a viewfinder, and use the primary cameras as the ones that you want for vlogging and photo taking. And honestly, that color science is really adding to what is a good set of hardware. Which brings me to a thought about the main sensor. I actually think more people should be talking about this a bit more. This is a new Sony sensor that has not been found on many smartphones. This is one of the first ones to have it. It's Sony's Lytia, L-Y-T-I-A, Lychee sensor. Basically, it's a stacked sensor, and if you happen to be familiar with like mirrorless cameras and whatnot, you know that a stacked sensor can actually bring quite a bit of benefit to a camera. It typically means a couple of things. Having a stacked sensor where there's literally 2 layers that are working together, it means that there are usually faster readouts on those sensors. That means faster autofocus, and and also no rolling shutter if that matters to you when it comes to video capture. I actually did this test with my Sony a7C II, and while the rolling shutter on that camera is not like the worst that's out there, it definitely looked more stable on the OnePlus Open. The other thing that it allows is more light input. After all, there are 2 layers that are actually taking in all of the light and the data, so basically what you can do is have a smaller, let's say, surface area when it comes to the size of the sensor, but have the same equivalent amount of light coming in as, let's say, a 1-inch style sensor. Whether or not it revolutionizes smartphone photography is still yet to be seen, but what makes me excited about having a stacked sensor on smartphones is that, well, it's going to start appearing on even more smartphones. So on the hardware level, we're probably going to have an increase in good camera quality, and then any of these companies, with OnePlus it's Hassleblad, any of these companies will just end up adding more to it, either with color grading or extra software processing and whatnot. I want to see where this sensor actually goes as we see it in more phones. But of course, as a Hassleblad camera, there's just a lot of personality inside of this camera interface. You get different modes like the X-Pan, which is just short of being a panoramic type photo, but it's a super wide photo that you can have in Hassleblad's color science or just go straight black and white, and you can get some really interesting looking photos out of it. That same sort of style is added into the movie mode, which is basically OnePlus and Hassleblad's version of a pro video mode. It's not a true pro video mode, however, because you're always locked at that wide aspect ratio. At the very least, you do have access to all of the other controls like an EV slider, which is something I always want to have when I take pictures and videos. After all, smartphone sensors are usually trying really hard to bring in as much light as possible, and that means photos and footage tend to come in a bit too hot. As a general rule, I like to underexpose my photos and all of my capture to around -1, maybe -0.7. It's just too bad that these controls are only available on the movie mode and at only this one aspect ratio. It would be good to have all of these controls in like a regular movie mode or a regular video mode that has like the full 4K frame and whatnot, but no, when you're using movie mode, they want you to have like that stylish Hassleblad-like look, and that's fine. I actually really enjoy having all of that, but sometimes you just want to have these controls in a regular video capturing environment. And then as far as usability is concerned, one thing that I find a little bit of a head scratcher is that the front-facing camera up here, this one is a 32 megapixel camera. It does do some pretty good footage and photos, especially for like selfies and whatnot, but if you want to like put the phone down and get something like a group shot, the moment you tilt up the phone, you just sort of lose all of that functionality. In order to get those tabletop selfies or group shots, you have to use the phone in the open configuration and use the slightly worse 20 megapixel inner display camera. I guess one of the remedies for that would be to open up the phone and use the primary cameras. You would want to anyways, because those are the best cameras on the phone, especially for things like vlogging and whatnot. And then you take this whole thing and lean it somewhere, that way you can get your tabletop selfies and whatnot. But it's just one of those things that I just noticed are a little bit missing as far as the various different iterations and uses for a foldable like this. Pictures are already going to be pretty great. I can pretty much expect that, especially with Hassleblad color science working its magic on things that OnePlus already brings to the table, including this Sony stacked sensor. But overall, I think that the video is fine, and it's helped along by the fact that the telephoto and the main sensor both have a pleasing amount of shallow depth of field. So getting a little bit of that cinematic look, especially when you go into the movie mode, that is all definitely possible. Which kind of brings me, I do want to make sure, I want to talk about price a little bit. Yes, with some of the stuff that's missing, like wireless charging and a higher IP rating, this is a phone that doesn't necessarily stack up to the prices of other foldables like the Pixel Fold and the Galaxy Z Fold 5. But one thing that OnePlus has been trying to do is make it so that trading in a phone makes it so that this is a much more affordable device. It's an interesting prospect because you can literally trade in anything that you want, even a broken phone. I even asked at one point during the briefing if you could trade in like a blown up Note 7, and they said yeah, as long as it kind of looks like a phone and it was a phone, then it will knock off $200 on this phone immediately. And when you think about it, that actually kind of makes this phone more of a $1,500 device. Maybe that's the price that it actually should have gone for even before those trade-ins. But it just stands that bigger foldables like this are always going to be at a higher price point. That's just kind of what we expect at this point. But at least those trade-ins, which are available throughout the lifespan of the phone, you can always just trade in a phone and make this a little bit more palatable to your wallet. And so, there you have it. A real-world camera test on the OnePlus Open, along with some thoughts that I had about the phone at large. After all, today's the day that we are actually all putting out our content on it. I want to thank you for watching my video, so I wanted to be sure that I provided at least a little bit of extra insight, not just about the cameras. However, you can look forward to my final thoughts as I continue using this phone over the next week or two in a what worked and what didn't piece here on my channel, so make sure you subscribe to my channel if you haven't already so you know when that video comes out. I am thoroughly enjoying this device, and I have to say, I think a lot of people might actually look at the OnePlus Open as their first foray into the, I'll call it somewhat ultra premium foldable category. After all, flip phones are starting to really proliferate, and now we have the bigger ones, and OnePlus is trying to be a part of that game. But with all of that said, I'm going to go ahead and call it on this one. Thank you so much for hanging out with me again today. Please take care of yourselves and each other, and enjoy your tea, everybody. If you haven't noticed, this is actually coffee. There's so much going on, I needed extra caffeine.